If you'd like to call
Blair
us
always
to order,
brings the
Mayor, we're
tough
ready to go.
questions.
Only if you didn't toast them.
You must have been digging around on my desk there.
Thank you, John.
Sarah, I'm going to get started unless you have some reason
Go
for
ahead
us
and
to
get
wait.
started, and then we can just have Councilwoman Orr come in when she comes in. So you can go ahead and call us to
Okay.
order, and then I'll do a roll call.
All right. Today is Tuesday, December 8th, 2020, and this is a fully virtual study session of the Prescott City Council. And I'd like to call this meeting to order. Let's please call roll.
Mayor Mangarelli.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Scholl.
Here.
Councilman Blair.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilman Good.
Here.
Councilmember Rusing.
Here.
Councilman Sishka.
Here.
And the record will reflect that Councilwoman Orr is arriving late to the meeting.
Okay. So we have 3 items today. So let's start with item 3A, please.
Discussion regarding the implementation of the TMDL action plan.
All right. And who's presenting here?
Should be Public Works.
All right. Craig he's on top.
Sorry, Sarah, we were still muted.
It's okay.
That's okay.
Good
We couldn't tell
afternoon.
that your lips were moving because you had your face mask on.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Matt Colleen with Public Works here. Pleased to share with you today the kind of summary results of our TMDL action plan. Today I'll be co-presenting with our primary consultant, Rebecca Sidnor of Wood Environment and Infrastructure Solutions. And the action plan that we're referring to refers to both the Watson Lake Reservoir and everything that drains into it, otherwise known as the Upper Granite Creek watershed. Before I jump into the background here, I just want to throw out a couple of our acronyms, the jargon that we use when talking about water quality. The 2 most common ones that will be mentioned throughout the course of this presentation are ADEQ, which represents the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, our primary regulator for these kind of considerations. And the other one is the TMDL. The TMDL is the total maximum daily load, which is simply a document that ADEQ compiles and the EPA approves at some point. And what that document does, it identifies the pollutants of concern in the watershed and prescribes a pollution reduction to the jurisdictions within it that they need to reduce to get to a healthy water quality, surface water quality standard. If we look at the history of this, this is not a quick moving ship that we're dealing with here. In 2004, the EPA identified Watson Lake as impaired for nitrogen, high pH, and low dissolved oxygen. Subsequent to that, in 2010, the Upper Granite Creek, all of Granite Creek above Watson Lake, was listed as impaired for E. coli. This was followed shortly thereafter by 11 additional creeks that drain in tributaries to Granite Creek that are throughout town. In 2015, ADEQ finalized the Watson Lake and Granite Creek watershed TMDLs. That was kind of an important date, and then it really spurred into action the city's response to those TMDLs, and that's what this plan is that we have before you today. So to provide a geographic and visual clue to what we're focusing on today, what we have on the screen is the Granite Creek watershed at Watson Lake. So everything that drains into Watson Lake is contained within these green lines.
Matt.
The orange represents those areas that were identified as impaired and for which the TMDL document
Can you not hear me?
have been written, both for the Watson Lake and independently for the Granite Creek watershed.
Not muted.
The red
Matt,
line for Granite Creek above the tribal lands is actually for another impairment that's really a reflection of low water volumes in there. It's a dissolved oxygen impairment. But as you can see, virtually every creek and water body above Watson Lake that runs on a semi-regular basis has been identified as impaired for E. coli.
Can you, okay, we're just starting to
there we go.
get the presentation up,
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you guys hear me? 'Cause
so
I-
we might need to kind of,
Oh, sorry.
is that Sarah?
Thought I had,
yeah. Can everybody hear me okay?
yes.
Okay.
I can hear you, Sarah.
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. Because I
We
just
just
said,
got
I
the,
just said
present-
Matt's name like 15 times
up.
and got no response.
So now I think we can kind of follow along. Go ahead.
All right. Just to make sure that we're all up to speed, is there anybody that has a question or needs a clarification on a prior slide, since we may not have had it up in time for you?
See if we can minimize this to get to the share. Down here, the green.
Yeah, we're looking at the presentation right now. Right now, the slide is the background that you went over earlier. So I
Okay.
think we're up to speed. You can go ahead and move forward. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, Matt. It wasn't sharing before, but I just shared my screen and I went back to the background slide. If you wanted to touch on this, or I could just fast forward to the watershed again for you.
Actually, Rebecca, if you could go ahead and forward us to the watershed map, that would be great.
Sure, there you go.
Thank you. So what this map is representing, it's a lot easier when it's in front of you rather than a theoretical construct, is the watershed of Watson Lake. So everything within the green line is draining towards that. Almost all of the creeks have been identified as impaired for E. coli. The lake is a nutrient-based impairment. It's really the results of a long history and a lot of city runoff going into it. As I mentioned briefly, the red line here is a little bit of an outlier. It's a dissolved oxygen impairment that was really reflective of low water flow during the period of data collection. When you don't have continuous flow, you tend to have stagnant pools that lose their oxygen over time. So it's really just a relic of that dating back to the early 2000s. And with that, we are at a transition period where Rebecca Sidner of Wood, Environment and Infrastructure will take over. Rebecca?
Great, thank you. Okay, all right. Thanks again. I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk with you today about the work efforts that Wood has provided for the past several years. My name is Rebecca Sidnor. I'm the project manager for this project. I'm located here in Phoenix. And in addition to myself, I also asked Seth Allen to attend today's meeting. He's been one of the leading project scientists who's been heavily involved in pretty much all aspects of this project since the beginning. As you can see from the action plan presented here, it's been a long journey to get to where we are today. There are two columns in this action plan. The first one is for the Watson Lake Reservoir TMDL, and the one on the right is for the Upper Granite Creek TMDL. The action plan was developed to provide the city with a roadmap for the development of the Lake Management Plan and the Watershed Pollutant Reduction Plan, which are the deliverables associated with this work effort. Both of the columns show the number of steps that have been taken. These steps include data analysis, research, developing a baseline model for current conditions, and then identifying and modeling alternatives or recommendations for how to comply with TMDLs. One thing that made this project really challenging was the integrated nature between the watershed and the lake. So while the constituents of concern for the lake were not listed as constituents of concern for the watershed, it was really important that we take them into consideration, since ultimately, as Matt had indicated, whatever's in the watershed is going to end up in the lake. After the modeling and alternatives were concluded, we developed the two plans shown here at the bottom, the lake management plan and the pollutant reduction plan. Okay. In addition to developing the lake model and the watershed model, there have been a lot of activities that have gone into developing the recommended alternatives. So specifically for Watson Lake, we collected and performed chemical analysis on 11 lake sediment samples, both at the sediment surface and within the top 3 feet. We also reanalyzed some old cores from a 2009 study by NAU. We coordinated with some folks associated with the Granite Reef Dam valve rehabilitation project in order to get a deep lake sediment sample. And then we also did a survey of lake sediment to characterize the volume of sediment within Watson Lake. In addition, we also performed 12 rounds of water quality monitoring each month for a year. For the watershed, we did a street dirt study, which was an interesting one. And it consisted of collecting street dirt samples from 16 locations throughout the watershed, reflecting different land uses and roadway types. And then we analyzed those samples for chemical composition and also physical parameters. We also did 1 round of stormwater samples at 12 locations throughout the watershed. And we analyzed those not only for E. coli, but also DNA markers for different types of species to better understand what hosts were contributing to the E. coli loading within the watershed. And those were evaluated for human, bovine, equine, canine, avian, and we also developed a preliminary marker for javelina, which was an interesting activity that we did with the Heritage Zoo. And then we also did a GIS analysis of the watershed in order to characterize the roadways for curbed and uncurbed, as well as to identify, based on their slope, what areas would be most advantageous for low impact development. And once we did all those activities, we did some modeling and came up with the recommendations that are presented in the plans. In these plans, we present our recommendations for complying with the TMDLs based on the effectiveness of the recommendation, as well as the cost associated with those recommendations and how easily they could be implemented. Primary recommendations for the lake consisted of aeration and nutrient reduction practices. Additionally, we had a second set of parameters, and those were algae and weed grown maintenance. The primary recommendation is aeration. Aeration. So there are actually several different ways to conduct aeration activities, but the primary idea is to introduce oxygen throughout the water column throughout the lake. There are several types of aeration presented in the photos shown here, but as long as we achieve the target reductions in dissolved oxygen, then there are several methods that could be implemented to achieve the goal. There are some options that are available purely submerged, and others are floating on the surface. But in order to purchase and install the recommended number of units, regardless of which option is pursued, the cost range for initial installation would be $125,000 to $250,000. An additional recommendation, an additional primary recommendation that is managing phosphorus, which is really important to achieve pollutant reduction. What we are recommending is nutrient inactivating chemicals to capture available phosphorus within the lake. There are many different types of chemicals that can be applied. And also, depending on how much phosphorus is targeted to lock up, depends on how much dosage is performed. And that's why we see the wide range in cost here of $96,000 to $192,000 per application. And there are 2 applications recommended per year. That would be essentially in the spring and then after monsoon season. Okay. Some additional secondary requirements all have would be very helpful in achieving pollutant reductions. But the one here that is shown at the top is the biocontrol of aquatic weeds. And this could be accomplished by stocking the fish with herbivorous fish. And this would be the most environmentally sound practice for controlling weeds as opposed to mechanical weed removal or other options as well. Before this could be pursued and implemented, it would be really important to coordinate with other agencies such as Arizona Department of Water Resources in order to ensure that proper permitting and controls are constructed and installed before any stocking could begin. And then once it's permitted, then initial stocking would be approximately 53,000 for the first year. And it would require subsequent annual stocking as the fish were to die off. Additionally, weed harvesting, and this can be achieved by a mechanical machine, as shown here in the center photo. And this would be really helpful, particularly during the key period of June and July. And this would be great for removing weeds that are within the lake. This could either be done by the city purchasing their own harvester or by hiring an outside contractor to come in and perform the service. If a harvester were to be purchased, that would be in the range of 85,000 to 150,000. It was noted when we were putting together this plan that it may have the added benefit of being used in other areas throughout the city, not just at Watson Lake. And then the last option that's presented here is sediment removal or dredging. Based on the outcome of the lake sediment analysis that we did, both for chemical composition and physical parameters, we established that we would have about 668,000 cubic yards of sediment within the lake. And when I thought about that, I was like, that's a really big number. What does that mean? And so essentially what we would have is, imagine a football field and it's stacked 78 stories tall as a building. And that's how much sediment's in the lake. So for dredging to be cost effective, you would need a lot less material than what's shown here. It is an option. It's a really expensive option. You could do partial dredging, but what we are showing here is for full volume dredging at 17 to 34 million. And this is not just for the dredging cost, but then also potential options for disposal of the material. Okay. In addition to the control measures that I just went over, we would certainly highly recommend performing ongoing monitoring. Ongoing monitoring is really important in order to monitor the performance of the activities that are being done, monitor lake conditions just as a matter of good practice as a lake operator, and then also document compliance activities for the TMDL. And this could either be done again by city personnel or an outside contractor. Attached to the lake management plan is a reference guide, and this is just intended to be a reference tool that city and lake managers can use to help understand and troubleshoot some common problems, especially for large lakes, especially with the challenges of Watson Lake. Okay, so as far as the recommendations, we did kind of group them into time frames in order to when these could be completed. So in the short term, the aeration system is really essential to complying with the TMDL and achieving those targeted values. So with the aeration system, we would highly recommend beginning work in the very near term in order to design and obtain quotes for the certain aeration system that could be installed. In addition, the city could purchase the equipment, train employees, and then conduct lake monitoring activities. Nutrient and activating chemicals could also be purchased, since it will be a long-term recommendation to try and have the fish stocking. So in the short term, the recommendation would be to go the route of the nutrient and activating chemicals. And then also implementing watershed control measures to reduce the influx of sediment and target constituents that enter Watson Lake. That's really important as well. In the midterm, go ahead and apply the nutrient inactivating chemicals. Again, that would be twice per year. You could install and maintain the aeration system, and then begin discussions with Game and Fish Department for stocking the lake. I'm sorry, I think I said earlier Arizona Department of Water Resources. That would be an organization that you would need to work with in order to achieve the fish stocking, but it's really Arizona Game and Fish Department. So sorry for misspeaking on that. In the long term, purchase of a weed harvester, you could do a pilot test to determine which equipment could be purchased or evaluating which contractors could provide the service for you. And then design and install fish barriers, and then go ahead and stocking the lake. The items shown with the asterisks would be control measures that would be performed on a routine basis. So it's not something that's one and done. It's something that would need to be done on a routine basis. Okay. For the Upper Granite Creek watershed, again, this is going upstream of the lake. The targeted pollutants that we were looking for were E. coli, and then as well as trying to take into consideration the nutrients for Watson Lake. So there was a wide range of control measures that were recommended within the plan, and they were broken into essential, high priority, medium priority, and low priority. So the only ones, just for the sake of time, the only ones that are presented here are the essential and the high priority control measures. And these would be the ones that are really critical in order to get that initial push at achieving compliance. And the nice thing here is, as you can see by the pound sign, is that a lot of these activities are things that the city is already doing. So it's really just making sure that they continue and are aggressive in making sure that these are completed. And these activities would be structural items. They would be retrofitting or repairing of the existing sanitary sewer system, constructing new sewer lines and connecting developed areas that are currently on septic systems. We also want to provide portable toilets, and I know that this has already started, but continue to provide those portable facilities at high traffic areas during recreation activities and near the homeless encampments or areas where homeless camping is frequent. And then in the long term, replacing those temporary facilities with more permanent facilities. The non-structural control measures, so these are activities that don't have a structural component associated with them, they're behaviors or activities that are done, is really to continue the coordination efforts with Yavapai County to identify those failing septic systems, and then enforce the ordinance requiring connections to the sanitary sewer system. And then continue the working relationships that have already been established with Prescott Creeks, the colleges, Butte Creek Restoration Council, and other organizations. And these are all targeting, if you didn't sense a theme here, these are all targeting the human sources of E. coli that contribute to the watershed. The high priority controls that are also recommended within the plan are the structural control measures to identify and install stormwater treatment systems. And this would be specifically to remove and infiltrate stormwater. So that way it contains the E. coli and phosphorus in lieu of going into creeks and ultimately into Watson Lake. Additionally, the non-structural control measures is to shift street sweeping a bit. And this would be to sweep minor street types on a monthly basis, and then arterials and collector streets on a weekly basis. And this would be really targeting the curbed areas is where you would have the most benefit on this change. As far as pet waste is concerned, we certainly want to see a continuation and expansion of providing the receptacle bags for pet waste, and then also educational signage to really impart upon the folks who use the trail and park system the importance of picking up after pets, not feeding wildlife, not feeding the ducks, things like that, in order to reduce the amount of pet waste and E. coli entering waters. Really important in this is not only public education, but also training for city employees and for park rangers and other folks who work in enforcement. And then educating the public, as I said, with the signage and other types of educational messages regarding leash ordinance, prohibiting the feeding of wild animals, and then picking up after pets. Here we go. Okay, as with the lake monitoring, watershed monitoring is also really important in order to identify what's working, what's not, and how we can make things better. So part of the monitoring is, some of this monitoring is already being performed. We did recommend a minor adjustment in the parameters, but monitoring inflow and outflow concentrations of E. coli as well as flow rates for all of the LID, low impact development facilities or structures. Also continuing to do E. coli and MST, that's the DNA marker testing, in order to really hone in and understand what changes in source or hosts are contributing to that E. coli loading through different portions of the watershed. And then lastly, street sweeping is really important when in terms of removing nutrients as well as E. coli from the roadway surfaces. It would be beneficial to test the equipment that's being used and also train operators in how to maximize or best optimize the street sweeping equipment so that it's operating in the intended way. Okay, I hope I didn't go too fast. I tried to get through a lot of material, but that is the overview of the lake and watershed pollutant reduction plan. And at this point, Matt and I, as well as Seth, our technical expert in performing this project, would welcome any questions you may have.
All right, thank you, Rebecca. Great presentation. Let's go around the horn here with council. Let's start with Councilman Sishka. Any questions, comments?
No, I have no questions or comments, Mayor.
Councilwoman Scholl?
I don't have any questions. This was super helpful, and I'm looking forward to more discussion about the potential mitigation strategies, and hopefully we can get some of that going. I think this will be really beneficial to our community. So thank you for all that hard work you've done.
Very good. Councilmember Rusi?
Thank you. I have a question. You mentioned you were testing the sediments. Did you test for heavy metals, and did you find any heavy metals in the sediments?
We did. Matt, do you want to respond, or shall I?
Go right ahead.
Okay. We did do a range of heavy metal sampling, and the reason that we undertook that effort was to understand if there would be any impacts on the disposal for dredged lake sediment. And the results of our analysis revealed that while there was some parameters present, none of them exceeded any regulatory limits that would have any bearing on disposal.
Okay, and then thank you. And a couple of your POCs, pollutants of concern, you had E. coli, sediments, stormwater, nitrogen, you mentioned phosphorus. Is that the breakdown from glycophosphates like Roundup?
If it's okay, I think this might be a good opportunity for Seth to weigh in on the phosphorus, but there are several constituents of concern, and the lake was impaired for the nutrients And then the watershed was for E. coli and dissolved oxygen. So those were the constituents of concern. Seth, do you mind responding to the additional question on the glycol?
Well, I'm not really familiar with what's in the Roundup per se. That's not the area of the science that I brought into the project. I largely focused on the watershed modeling and especially the lake modeling. But there's a wide number of sources for phosphorus. It is naturally occurring to some level as soil and rock is eroded and washed into the creek. It's naturally occurring in biomaterial. So leaves dropping on the streets, getting washed downstream, pet waste. A big source of phosphorus is likely from the septic and the leaking sewage system. And I think it's important to know that even a well-functioning septic system is not designed to reduce phosphorus from the waste stream. So even if septic systems are functioning very well, they're still discharging phosphorus into the environment. And even a wastewater treatment stream would have to go to tertiary treatment to address the phosphorus. So that's where we have a number, and why we have a number of recommendations regarding treating phosphorus is that for every pound of phosphorus in the lake, you typically can support 200 pounds of algae. So it doesn't take much to potential. I mean, there's other limitations on the growth of algae, but if other things are conducive, temperature and other supplies, you could see blooms of 200 to 1.
Wow, thank you very much.
All right, let's go to Councilwoman Orr.
Thank
Sarah,
you, Mayor.
Oh, there you are. Yeah, go ahead, Billy.
Yeah, no. And I missed roll call, but I was in right after roll call. I
Okay.
just couldn't find the link. So I just want to say I'm just really pleased that we're working with Michael Bird and Chris and Prescott Creeks to continue to do that. So I just would really encourage that.
All right, thank you. Councilman Good?
I had a couple of concerns. I know you recommended a herbivorous fish as a low-cost solution. And I think that white emer is a fish native to Southeast Asia, is causing destruction of fisheries in the Great Lakes. And I don't know, is it being used or tried anywhere in Arizona right now?
I can take that one. So the white amur that Game and Fish allows in these settings is actually a triploid version, making it sterile. So it doesn't have the ability to breed in the wild per se. So that's one of the reasons there are so many regulations, is exactly what you're speaking to about the potential negative impact on native or other sport fisheries. Right. So that's why it is actually enshrined in Arizona Administrative Code into the permitting of this. And actually our folks in Recreation Services have already initiated a conversation, and we've got better feedback from Game and Fish that this is a reality for us potentially going forward. And that hasn't been the case historically. So again, these fish are certified as sterile, and we do work with Game and Fish to make sure that all relevant guidelines and regulations would be in place.
I'm sorry.
So it wouldn't compete with
jump.
You know, I'm a council member and I'm in the middle of.
Excuse me just a second. Hey, Councilmember Rusine. Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that.
So yeah, they are inherently herbivorous fish. And so there's plenty of that habitat in Watson Lake for sure. And so there wouldn't be direct competition with the other fish, which tend to be more predatory fish or omnivorous fish. And we've got plenty of weeds for them for quite a while. So we think it could be a really good fit.
Regarding the weed harvesting, is that something that can be outsourced and contracted? Are there available private weed harvesting companies available?
Yes, absolutely. And it may merit looking at it from that perspective. one other thing is that, each one of these represent tools in our toolboxes. And so we may not need to use all of them. If we're able to go in a timely fashion with the herbivorous fish and stock them, it may prevent our need from getting a weed harvester or contracting that out. So there is kind of that adaptive approach to it, where we're looking for something along the lines of a white Amur that has some of the lowest kind of cost to benefit ratio, or the best, I should say, cost to benefit ratio. And that could prevent us from having to invest in a big piece of equipment and the ongoing operation, maintenance, and storage of it. So those are all considerations that we would take, and contracting it definitely, given the seasonal nature of its application, could make a lot of sense.
Well, I know that'll be our challenge, is to balance the cost for achieving some of this required reduction in TMDL, at the same time supporting recreational opportunities and making the lake available to not only the local residents, but as a tourist attraction as well. So thank you for the efforts, and we'll be looking at trying to assess what steps can be taken in a cost-effective manner in the short, medium, and long term. Thank you.
All right, and Councilman Blair.
Thank you, Mayor. I was polishing your desk. I want to say thank you to everybody out there. This has been an ongoing irritation of mine for 20 years, being on council, and it's amazing to me that it's taken this long to get to this point. I guess now we're just finally starting to take it seriously enough to clean them up. Knowing that Southwest Forest Industries was located on Granite Creek and, discharged some of their creosote treatments and stuff, and all the forest fires and all the things that have washed down through those creek beds. My comment would be, we're constrained by SRP in a big way of how deep we can dredge those lakes for water storage. And so I wouldn't look forward to doing that. But one thing I didn't see in the study would be to put silt catchment basins and impediment basins at the front edge of those creeks before they enter the lake, to help try to clarify some of that, which is a pretty inexpensive thing to do. Also, I'm way for aerification to add oxygen into the lakes, not only for the habitat of the fish, but also to keep the E. coli or the algae bloom and things down. I think we're on the right direction. And we have put in place in our water bill, if Mark Woodfield's around, but maybe Craig can respond to it. I think there's a 75-cent fee on our wastewater bill that goes directly to helping the funding of the cost of cleaning up these lakes and creek beds, if I'm not mistaken. So with all that said, thank you guys for bringing this forward. I think the public will respect the council for moving forward with some degree of how to make this happen sooner than later, and not just become something on the bookshelf. It needs to be taking place. And I want everybody to know, I heard it 2 or 3 times in this presentation, that E. coli in these septic tanks, whether they're functioning or not functioning, we got to get them out of the system. That should be the goal, not only for our safe yield, but our goal for quality environmental studies and the things that we can do for passive and outdoor recreation. So thank you, guys. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman. Craig, do you have a clarification on that question that Councilman Blair had?
He is correct on, there is a water, I forget the exact term for it, water improvement or there you go, aquifer protection fee on the water bills that is creating funding for items like we're discussing here.
Yeah, very good. Thank you for that. Okay, we've gone through the council here. Sarah, is there anyone in the public? Do you have any, email comments or anybody with a raised hand out there?
I do not, Mayor.
No? Okay. Well, we've gone through the council. We have no public comment. So I think I want to thank you guys again for your work on this project. It's very important, and I look forward to getting some of these things implemented. So thank you for your presentation today. And with that, we'll move on to item 3B, please.
Update to general engineering standards.
I assume this is Bryn or Craig or some combination.
I'm working on getting presentation up. Sarah, I'm not, let's see.
Looks like you got it going now,
There you
Craig.
go, Craig.
There we go.
Just,
Get rid of that.
Matt.
Just a sec.
There you go.
Is that better?
Yep.
Okay.
Looks good.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Craig Dodseth and Gwen Roach from Public Works. So a little update on where we're at with the GESs. Staff has been working on them, since they were originally drafted and adopted in 2016. So since that time, we've been receiving information from our industry construction partners as well as city staff, and there have been identified areas of the articles and or the details that have issues or could use clarification. What we're working from right now, the GESs, is the first edition of them. So we've been working on revisions and such by gathering information from our partners as well as staff from the things, from that first edition that we identified don't work and or needed improvements. So currently we have the 10 GS articles, and to date we've gone through 8 of them with staff as well as management have reviewed and have comments or proposed changes to those 8 different articles. There's 2 that are still being worked on, need to be reviewed through the management side. So one of them is Article 1, which ultimately the changes to the other 8 articles that have been looked at have prompted changes that have been identified needed in Article 1. And then Article 2, associated with grading, we're looking at incorporating geotechnical guidelines into those that have been provided by a consultant. However, what was provided to us is far too cumbersome and too much information for it to go in there. So we are working on whittling that down to get appropriate information included in there for geotechnical, but not have the entire encyclopedia in that article. On the side then were standard details. When they were originally created, on the Quad City side, there were 66 standard details created. 47 of those have been redlined to date. There are 3 new proposed and 2 proposed to be deleted. Then there's a combination of 3 different types of details within the standard details. Quad City are available to be used within Prescott Valley. Chino Valley uses the Quad City details, Yavapai County. So the Quad City ones is a detail that's been adopted and accepted by everyone in the area. And then there are some specific details to Prescott or Prescott Valley, depending on our specific needs within our independent communities. So then on the P details, as we refer to them, there are originally 42 of those. 23 of those have been redlined. There's proposed for 10 new ones and deleting 3. And on the Prescott Valley side, there was originally 17. 4 of those have been redlined. They're proposing 20 new and deleting 1. Some of the other things that came from our industry partners is that we can't change one thing at a time, that we need to have a comprehensive look at this, and that's what this process has been doing, is to get a total comprehensive, redlined, commented review put in place or put together, and then we will release that total package to our industry partners in order for them to review that and add comments and suggestions and or changes that they propose. So I mentioned that we're proposing some new details. For instance, here's one that we've run into. Now that we are proposing more multi-use trails, we've run into this in a couple locations. So our previous detail, this happens to be a radius on a curb and gutter sidewalk of a street, and our current detail has a concrete wall right across the back of this landing. And we ran into trouble on a project where then we wanted to bring the multi-use trail up in order to connect into the sidewalk in order for the users of the multi-use trail to cross at an intersection safely and then continue on. So this detail is a brand new detail that's being proposed in order to help incorporate that into projects. And then on the revision side for standard details, for instance, this detail is a water blow-off in the water system. And the information, all the information in black is what the current detail has. The red is new information that's being proposed to provide to our partners, just because it was not clear enough for them to be able to hand this to someone and tell them to build this. They needed additional information, like here, showing blocking, in order to give an individual the full picture of information on what we were trying to have them build in order to take care of this piece of infrastructure in the system. So that's some of the details when we talk about how many have been redlined. That's the type of things there, as well as then new. So that's where we're at currently. With it, that we have the 2 more articles to finish reviewing. Details have all been redlined. Now the review of those will go through management, and we will put it out as a total package. With that, be happy to answer any questions that you and the council have, Mayor.
Mayor?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Craig. Hey, you know what? I was going to call on you first, Councilman Blair. Go ahead.
Hey, all right. I guess, for everything that we do out there, what I tend to get aggravated about is the fact that whenever we create a law or create something somebody's got to do, we need to make sure if it's not working that we fix it immediately and not allow it just to flounder, because it's an aggravation not only to the people using it, and plus the fact of the matter is there's some things that aren't concurrent in Prescott that are maybe in Prescott Valley. They all should be equally as strong so that our companies out there understand what those are. I had a gentleman to me yesterday, Craig, that was aggravated, and I haven't brought it forward to staff yet, that they were turned down for a gas yard line for a barbecue because there was no engineering standards to it. Whereas my understanding is Prescott Valley and Prescott, Yavapai County don't require that kind of specific review by an engineer or an engineer's staff. Now that may be right or wrong, but I want to make sure that whatever we're doing out there, that this document goes to the trades through YCCA and that it's reviewed again with a third set of eyes.
You are correct that yes, it will go out there to YCCA and everyone in the community. We will post it and have it available for review and comment. And then to your frustration that you mentioned, I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to help with that one. That's going to be associated with the building side and not on public infrastructure that all of our GESs are drafted towards.
Yeah, I appreciate everything you guys do, because I know we've come a long ways in the last 2 or 3 years, and thank you very much. My phone has quit ringing as much. Matter of fact, on the public works side, it's quit ringing totally. I think it's because we've worked hard to make sure we're doing the right thing, and that there's not 2 sets of rules or 2 sets of opinions that conflict with one another. So thank you again for making sure that we have total clarity on what we're trying to achieve.
All right, thank you, Councilman. Let's go to Councilman Good. Councilman Good,
Here.
do you have some comments?
Yeah, my just comments are, I agree with Councilman Blair that we need to have kind of a uniform standard throughout the general Quad Cities area so that our individual contractors and builders have a predictable set of guidelines to work with. It becomes very difficult, especially for individual contractors to have to juggle different requirements in different localities. So I know sometimes the large builders and developers have the staff to be able to work on big projects that are going to be consistent, but some of our individual contractors really don't have some of that capability. And having some predictable guidelines to work with is going to really save a lot of headaches for all of them. So I think we're heading in the right direction here, and the sooner we can get to a common standard for everyone, I think the better. So thank you, guys.
All right, let's move over to Councilwoman Orr.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. You know, every time we put a requirement on a builder that possibly isn't absolutely necessary, we increase the price of that home. And I just think that we need to be very careful. You know, we talk a lot about our general plan, and our general plan talks about affordable living, affordable homes, and then we put these requirements on that make the home then unaffordable. So I also just want to thank YCCA, Sandy Griffiths. I thought the letter that she submitted with ideas and points was very good. And I know, Craig, that you work closely with YCCA, and because they are just a great arm in the community for us to listen to what their recommendations. So I'm very concerned about how our homes are getting just really unaffordable, and some of it is because of the requirements that we put on them.
All right, thank you. Let's go to Councilmember Rusi.
Thank you. I just want to thank Craig for all his hard work. And this is going to be a huge improvement. I remember last year when community development had a road show with their uniform building code standards with the Quad City area communities. And I was just going to ask Craig, when he says Quad Cities, which does that include Mayor Dewey Humboldt, or who does that include?
It's right here, Chino Valley, Prescott Valley, and then Dewey Humboldt.
Okay, thank you.
As well as Yavapai County also uses them.
Okay, great.
All right, Councilwoman Troll.
Thanks, Mayor. I don't have any specific questions. I would just echo what Councilwoman Orr said, to continue to work with our construction community and stakeholders to keep them apprised, and just try to be as flexible as we can be with working within our bounds that we need to.
All right, very good. And Councilman Sishka.
Mayor, I have nothing to add.
All right, thank you. Sarah, do you see or have any email comments or any public comments that you're aware of this time?
I do not, Mayor.
All right. Well, Craig, thanks again for your work on this, and just encourage you to continue to work with all of the builders in the area. Very important. And Billy mentioned YCCA. I think it's important to make sure we stay close to those folks and listen. And I also echo just that affordability piece, that, you know, we want to be mindful that while we want to build in a very responsible fashion, we also want to be mindful of the costs associated with some of these things that we're asking them to do. All right, let's move on to the final item, 3C, please.
Presentation
Good
on permitting
afternoon.
system portal and plan review efficiency options.
Wonderful. Good
Sarah, can you
afternoon.
need us to stop sharing? Should we stop sharing at Public
Yes,
Works
Craig,
now,
please
Sarah?
stop sharing your screen at this time. Thank you.
Yes, Craig, would you please stop sharing your screen? Thank
There you
you.
go.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Chelsea Walton with the City Manager's Office. And today I am co-presenter on this item. I'll be covering the permitting portal updates, and then we'll pass the presentation over to Community Development Director Bryn Stotler for the plan review updates. So the latest, as the implementation lead on the business side of things, we have launched the online permitting portal, PrescottPermits.com, as of October 1st, with the help of some of our private side beta testers, of which Sandy Griffiths was one, and we really appreciated her input, as well as all of our private partners who participated in that process. This was the final piece of our implementation for our new internal permitting software. It fully integrates with what staff uses on a daily basis to work through their processes. So it's kind of nice for our customers to engage directly in a platform that integrates in real time with what staff is doing on the inside. This has been well received by the building and development community. They've all been engaged and online and navigating it and reaching out if they have issues. And so far, so good. So what is the portal exactly? Well, it's really the way that our customers can engage in permitting, planning, and zoning services all online. They can apply, they can submit corrections, they can pay fees, they can schedule inspections, all from the comfort of their office or home, or even their mobile device. There are two different levels of access. It was important for us to have availability for new customers. So someone who's from out of town or maybe hasn't applied for a permit before, they don't have to be a registered customer user in order to start the permit process. So we do have a public level of access. And on the back side of applying, we will then create a customer profile for them, but they don't have to wait for us to do that in order to get into the review queue. So far, we've had a lot of really great participation in our online trainings. I think I totaled it up somewhere like 45 people. We've been trying to do trainings a couple of times each week since we launched, and those have been going really well. We also have tutorial videos currently in production, and we hope to have those online in the next week or two, as well as kiosks here at City Hall that are set up when we do reopen City Hall. We have those set up. And when we were open after October 1st, we did have several customers come in and sit at the kiosk and enter their information. So we're trying to really make this as user-friendly and push it as a resource for our customers. It's a tool for them to use, and we want to make sure they know how to use it. So at this point, before I transition over to Bryn Stotler for a look at the permit plan review timelines, I'd just like to give you a quick snapshot of the site itself, just so you know what your friends and your colleagues out in the community are seeing when they log on to www.PrescottPermits.com. So this is the home page, and we try to keep this up to date with any timely information. We also have posted our training opportunities. Of course, we have these ones are completed, but we do have another session coming up Friday. So it kind of shows them how I take them through the entire site there. But further down on the main page is a way for them to see what kind of services we offer. And real quick, I'm going to go ahead and log in as a customer user. And this is where, if you were a public and new, you could go ahead and set up your own account and log in as a public. But again, that is only to apply, and we want everybody to be a customer on the back end of the process. So I'm going to go ahead and log in here. Okay, so this is what the customers see. This is their dashboard. What's really nice about this online site is it will save your progress if you have to navigate away for whatever reason. Get a phone call, someone walks in your office. The site can save your application if you have not yet submitted. But once you have submitted, all of your active permits are stored in a section that you can easily see where they are. It gives you an overview of status, what fees may be due, what if it's issued, you can request an inspection or make an attachment right from this page. And let's drill into one real quick for you. This is what folks see when they drill into one of their permit records. Now, when you apply for a new permit, like I said before, it goes directly into our permitting software. There's no middle ground where something's looming, not yet in the system. It goes directly into where staff can see it, and it's automatically assigned a permit number. So folks can immediately see that, hey, it's in the system. I've got a permit number for tracking, and then they can use this page in order to track status and check to see if there's any attachments. Staff does send them emails whenever action is required on their side. So if they need to submit corrections, if they need to pay for a fee, they don't have to just sit on this website and wait for it to update. They will get a proactive message from staff letting them know that it's time to take action. So they'll see all of their new attachments if they have any. They can go through all of these tabs, which provide them basic GIS mapping information on the site, contact information of people relative to the particular permit, a history of fees that either need to be paid or have been paid, upcoming inspections, any conditions that are associated with the permit. And then my personal favorite, the reviews tab, which I think our customers are getting used to it, but whenever staff would field phone calls, I heard something like 50% of the phone calls that they would get were, where is my permit? Who's looking at it? How much longer is it going to be? And this is the tab where for whichever permit they select, they can see exactly where it is, who's reviewing it. They can drill down to receive more information. And this is something new, and this is something that City Manager Michael Lamar really had staff stretch to accommodate and get this kind of set up, was notes being available to customers mid-round. We have a disclaimer saying that, hey, you know, notes, review comments are subject to change based on other review comments. Sometimes a public works review comment will be impacted by what a fire reviewer will result. So we do have a disclaimer that says, you know, these aren't considered final until they're published in the letter form, but for the convenience of our customers, the notes are available right in real time as a reviewer results them. So all a customer needs to do is access the permit from their dashboard, click the reviews tab, and then they can see whether the review is completed, when it was completed, when it might be due if it's not completed, and then any review notes associated with that round of review. So all from the comfort of their homes, they can engage in our process. And that was really the goal behind launching PrescottPermits.com. And I'm happy to say that our customers have gotten used to it. I've heard some great feedback that it's fairly easy to use. And I will say we've got just about 500 customers registered on the site. And of that, like I said, we've had south of 50 go through the training, but everybody who hasn't gone through the training seems to navigate it pretty well. It's fairly straightforward, and we are grateful for that. So that was my portion of the website, and I would be happy to take council through a little preview of applying for a permit. If you'd like, I probably have time to do that. Is that okay with you, Mayor, that I just take you through? It'll take probably less than 2 minutes. So the first thing that you'll see when you apply for a new permit is our disclaimer page. And this is the same verbiage that our customers saw in our paper permit applications, with the caveat that plan review comments are now available for our customers mid-round. Once the reviewer is completed, they are available to view. Customer does have to agree to that, the entire disclaimer page before they can progress through the system. But from there, this is the meat of the application. They have to select what type and subtype. So typically, we do get a lot of single family residential, and they can choose what they're doing. And just for the sake of this demonstration, you can see that I selected a single family and then a permit subtype of remodel. And this blue link that appeared to the right side of the screen is the submittal checklist. So this is what our customers would see in the paper application that would give them a guide as to what their plans should entail. So we wanted to make sure our customers had all of that information at their fingertips. And then honestly, they would progress through the application from there. And you can see that the questions below change based on my permit type. And that's because with the electronic format, we can have as many applications as we need to have. And so we can make them as minimal as we like, or include enough information as we need them to include. So beyond that, you just complete the application here and answer the asterisk questions, include any other important data that is necessary for the plan reviewers. But really, we have just a few bits here. All right. And I've taken so many folks through the training. Like I said, it's been great. So, all right. So once you answer all of these questions that have the asterisk, and you've fulfilled the application as much as is relative to your project, you simply get your address, which will attach directly. And then you upload your permit information, your plans. Oops. And it's easy as drag and drop. And what's really nice about this is the temporary measure we had in place as COVID struck, when Prescott Permits wasn't quite ready. That would be a place where everybody's projects would go into one bucket, and it was very difficult for staff to sort through, get them attached to the right place. This, like I said before, happens in real time, and it attaches directly to the record itself. So there's really not a whole lot of of staff sorting out that needs to take place. This happens in real time for our customers and goes to the right place. So clicking the upload, and you see we've got our plans there. Next step, we put in all of our contact information, and we're on our way. I don't know why my Google autofill decided not to work for this presentation, so sorry you're having to watch me type a lot. And that's it. It's as simple as that. As long as you have your plans ready to submit, you just go through that short application, and this is where you review and submit. Now, Council, I'm not going to submit this. I've had Laurel Collins give me a question, puzzled look at the end of the month when she's trying to do census numbers and says, why were you applying for a fire spray booth for City Hall? Doing the trainings a lot, I do apply for many test permits. But anyhow, Council, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have, but this is what the site does, and so far so good. We're really happy with it.
Very good. Good presentation. Thank you, Chelsea. I noticed in Sandy Griffith's comments that some of the contractors have had to upgrade their flip phones to smartphones now as a result of our Prescott permitting online process. I thought that was kind of funny.
Right.
Well, this is great, particularly during the pandemic, to have this available. Bryn, did you have anything else to add to the presentation?
I have quite a few more slides, Mayor, but I just wanted to acknowledge Chelsea's superior coordination and amazing project management throughout this whole implementation. And this last piece was long awaited, and it's really the crowning glory. We're very happy to be working with the builder community to make this accessible, simple, and something they can do from their smartphone. So bringing everybody into the 21st century.
Great. Okay, with that, I will
Well,
pass
good.
it back over. Yes, Mayor.
No, go ahead. Yeah, pass. We can do Bryn's part if you'd like, and then do questions, comments after that. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Mayor, City Manager Michael Lamar did want to speak before Bryn gets started.
Yeah, Mr. Lamar.
Yes, Mayor, I'm over here. I just wanted to
There you go.
add a little bit of information for the public and for council to understand. Everything you just saw that's moving to an electronic online platform is labor-intensive paper data entry by the applicant and by staff that's going on now, that's added to inefficiencies. But to get us to this point, Chelsea's done yeoman's work upgrading our technology skill set in-house, training the people on the private sector side. And as she alluded to, from an inefficiency standpoint, 50% of our call volume across the hall is associated with, hey, where's my permit? That alone will reduce 50% of the calls just so people know in real time where they're at. And I don't want that to be missed or overlooked, how really important that is as we try to be more efficient and take advantage of 21st century technology, that this really is the wave of the future. And we're going to do everything humanly possible to get people trained up on this in the private sector. And knock on wood, so far so good. The private sector has really responded quite well. And I also, as Bryn goes into her presentation, and she's going to make what I think is a very reasonable pitch for an additional planning as examiner position, I want you guys to think about how many things we've done short of add in-house bodies to try to be more efficient, whether it's this online permitting system, contract private firms, looking at self-certification, which is also going to be talked about. We don't willy-nilly ask for positions. We try very hard to get by with existing human resources. But sometimes when the rubber hits the road and the volume is so great, you don't have a choice anymore. And I just wanted to talk about that before Brent had an opportunity.
Yep, very good. Thank you, Michael. All right, Bryn, would you like to do your part of the presentation now?
Sure would, Mayor. Thank you. Chelsea, go ahead and advance to next slide. And thank you, Michael, for that introduction because it's helpful. It's going to context a lot of this information for the council. Can everybody hear me okay? Just want to make sure. I had some audio issues earlier.
We can hear you. Thank you, Bryn.
Okay, great. So I wanted to start out with a little bit of the economic picture and a little bit of retrospective for the last 3 years with permit data. What you're looking at is 2018, 19, and 20. Let me qualify that the 2020 numbers do only go through the first week of December. So we have the balance of December left that will be added to these numbers. We're talking about permit totals here. The blue columns are total permit volume on a year-to-date basis for 2020 and a total for 18 and 19. So you can see that we're tracking very similarly to 2019 on volume, even with the COVID slowdown that we experienced in the spring. This is a really strong indicator that our building industry and our builder community is highly active. People are still interested in Prescott. They are looking into all types of builds. We've had a significant uptick in commercial. We've had a very large uptick in private mom and pop owner builder renovations, window replacements, additions of gas fireplaces, seasonally influenced as well. So there is good, strong economic data here to indicate that we are on track, even with the COVID slowdowns and the closures of City Hall 3 times this year, to at least meet or exceed last year's numbers. And that is a very promising sign. So next slide, please, Chelsea. Again, looking at another metric, our plan review, which is really where our significant delays come in. When the volume ticks up, we still only have the number of people in-house to do plan review available. So these plan reviews over the past 3 years show that significant increase. I would also note that the 2020 number being significantly higher than 19 is a reflection of those smaller permit types, the volume, the sheer volume of those smaller permit types above and beyond what our normal permit volume is. Those all represent plan reviews. So whether they come in for a gas fireplace or whether they come in for a single family residence, it represents a plan review that has an allocation of human resources and work product time and load. So again, we're seeing a good economic indication here that our building community will be staying busy for the foreseeable future. And our staff is working as hard as possible to turn these permits around and complete these plan reviews more concisely. I want to also acknowledge the fact that, yes, we do have an outsourced contract. It's been extremely beneficial to our inspection team because we have one basically full-time inspector who is working exclusively in the production builder communities, those master plans in North Prescott, Deepwell Ranch, Granite Dells Estates, and Walden Farms. And we spend about $10,000 a month for that inspection service. And we also have shipped off, year to date, we've shipped off 87 plan reviews to the outsourced vendor, just in the interest of trying to keep up with the volume. Each one of those plan reviews shipped off to the vendor is billed to us at a roughly $1,000 if we're talking about a typical single family residence. So you can quantify those plan reviews, those 87 plan reviews, as $1,000 a piece, representing about $87,000 against the contract. Unfortunately, in the plan review realm, it takes a little bit longer and takes a little bit more of our own staff time to manage the to and fro of those plan reviews with the vendor. And we definitely are careful to address our local custom builder community by keeping those in-house. So a lot of the plan reviews that go down to the Willdan contract are light commercials. They are home renovations and the like. We try to keep our customs in-house and serve our local builder community that's always been here with personal attention. But again, very good economic indicators here with the plan review volume. Next slide, please. This looks at 2020 only and drills down a little bit further. The short green lines are representative of our express permitting volume. That means the production builders who submit model plans when they come up with a new development and a new slate of models, they submit full model plans to us. We do a full review on those model plans. And then for the remainder, after those model plans are approved, as they sell lots and those plans are selected, they submit those back to us on a more of a site plan approval basis, which is called an express permit. So about a portion of our plan reviews each month are representative of express permitting. And then you'll see that the white part of the graphing is our scheduled plan reviews, and then the blue represents the totals. So again, December of this year is only representing 1 week of our total month. That will jump up significantly based on what's in the queue right now. November, I think we did see a little bit of a seasonal fluctuation there. And based on the conversations I've had with Krista and the permitting team, they do notice that November has slowed slightly. But again, 1 week in December has almost met the November total. So I think we are on track to finish the year very strongly. But this gives you an idea of how busy we got over the summer months, even with the City Hall closure, showing that our building industry is, again, they're really out there, they're working hard, and so are we to keep up with their volume. Next slide, please. So one of the aspects in plan review timeframe that we wanted to discuss today, and this is an opportunity to strategize to compress timeframes, but it's called self-certification. This is a concept that became very popular in the early 2010s down in the Valley. Around 2012 and 13, many Valley jurisdictions, City of Phoenix being the primary one, but a lot of the other smaller communities around Phoenix followed suit and adopted a self-certification program. What that means is that architects, engineers, and registered land surveyors are eligible to participate in a program with those jurisdictions that allows them to basically self-certify that their plans, their submittal, are entirely designed to the appropriate code cycle that in that jurisdiction, and they are submitted, and in exchange for submittal, they basically get a permit with a very, very quick turnaround, either on the spot or within 24 to 48 hours after the self-certificated submittal is brought to the jurisdiction or uploaded in this case. And it allows the jurisdiction to basically assign the liability of the plan review back to the technical registrant. Architects, civil engineers, registered land surveyors are all technical registrants governed by the Arizona State Board of Technical Registration. They have to meet a great variety of high standards in order to have a professional engineer's designation, a registered land surveyor designation, or an architect's designation. They have completed higher education that all point towards those designations. So self-certification was designed for jurisdictions to be able to offer certain types of permits, the opportunity to be on an exchange basis, meaning you bring me your plans, you're a member of our self-certification group, you bring us plans, we exchange it for a permit, and the checks on that project are done primarily in the field by the inspection team. Now that does place a greater onus on the inspection team to make sure that what has been submitted is being built to code in the field. And there is some risk involved with that. And we'll get into a little bit more detail about that as we move on. But what this is an opportunity to improve is to compress plan review timeframes or eliminate them almost completely for a certain body of permits. And as a part of this, we had a conversation with YCCA. Michael Lamar was present, Chelsea was present, Paul was present, and about 15 members of our contractor community came in. A few of them are actually architects and contractors. So we had that dialogue during the meeting as well. We talked with them about self-certification, and I will right now wave the flag for YCCA. They brought this to us to look into as an option to compress plan review timeframes. And being the wife of a technical registrant, I hadn't ever really considered this in community development's case, but I'm glad that we had the opportunity to have the initial conversation and look more fully into it. So we have a number of other jurisdictions that we've surveyed. I've talked with representatives who oversee those programs for their jurisdictions, and we're going to go on to the next slide and talk a little bit about what that looks like. So the City of Phoenix is really the model of this program for the Valley jurisdictions. They created a training to have their registrants come in to the City of Phoenix and attend a week-long training that basically makes them eligible to be placed on the self-certified list. And so they are, once they are through that training process and are self-certified to submit, they can bring their plans to the counter or to the upload site. And they can exchange those plans basically for an issued permit with conditions. The registrant does agree to submit to a random audit, and everybody's auditing program looked a little bit different. So we'll talk about that as we get into the individual jurisdictions that I spoke with. But it's important to note that this doesn't come without a check and balance from our side. We may be foregoing the plan review hours, but we still have to audit the work that the self-certified registrants are submitting. We also need to determine how many registrants in our area are interested in this service, are interested in the opportunity to be able to submit that way. Some registrants have emphatically stated to me that they really don't wish to assume the entire liability for their plan, for the plan review, for the code compliance piece of it. And many registrants also are sort of unabashedly admit that they do utilize our plan review services as a check on their work. And I think that works like that in most jurisdictions. That's not at all unusual. But I think if we look at this as an opportunity, we can maybe drill down on the permit types that this could apply to, in our case, to make a benefit to our plan review timeframes. So the permit, again, the permit is issued upon the presentation of self-certified plans. The inspections become the check. What I wanted to go into about the inspection piece is our plan reviewers are all also certified building inspectors, but our building inspection team are not also all plan reviewers and are not certified. So it would be, from my perspective, beneficial for inspectors to also be certified plan reviewers if this type of a program were initiated in Prescott. The reason is that the onus becomes on the inspector. The code compliance has to be identified in the field. If there were an issue with code compliance, say that the approved plan set is out there, but what the inspector identifies is that this project is being built to either a different code cycle, perhaps based on experience of the GC or the subs, or is just not being built in compliance to the active code cycle, that would create a delay in the build. And that's a definite risk for the general contractor, and it's also a definite risk for the person contracting to purchase the home or commercial project. So it would really insert a delay at the least opportune time with a vertical build. And that probably is my greatest reservation about this. If we have self-certified registrants who are submitting projects and we audit them and we find that, or we have an interruption in the field due to a lack of code compliance in the build, we are going to have to stop everything and sort through it and get the approved plan set modified so that they can proceed. That would be a very inopportune time to have a delay with a general contractor, a contract in place, and a timeline that they're trying to abide by. So I just want everybody to be mindful of that. That is where the delay would occur. Again, I spoke with several jurisdictions. I started with the city of Chandler. I talked to Leray Ron, he's the acting CBO right now. They launched their program in late 2014. They focus it on commercial tenant improvements or change of use only. So this is an idea, this is sort of a representation of where you would narrow the program so that you could maintain good control over the types of projects that were self-certified. Change of use comes into play when one commercial property goes into a different type of use that triggers additional building code requirements. Commercial tenant improvements are not usually ground up. They are existing structures where something's being done to the interior to make way for a new type of business. So this is a good representation of how you could narrow that scope. This Chandler's program does not allow for new construction. In other words, ground up with site work and infrastructure, and no residential. They just don't go there. When I talked to Leray, he admitted that he didn't think that their program was very successful. And that's because he admitted that they only have 2 technical registrants who are participating. I don't know if they originally had more, maybe they did and the popularity dropped off. But the 2 registrants he reflected on were involved for very specific reasons. One was a new architect who was in the process of building her business, and she felt that the self-certification was a good add to her resume or her CV. The other one was a commercial contractor who only does dental offices, and he really basically works off of the same plan all the time. So there's an example of how you could create a program and have it under participated in for a variety of reasons. And these programs don't come without, the creation of departmental infrastructure and all of the checks and balances that we have for any of our other compressed timeframe programs. Just a side note. I talked to Chris Boyd, who's the Community Development Director at the City of Surprise. They also launched around the same time. They launched in 2013. They use Phoenix's certified list only. So, and many of the jurisdictions in the Valley do this. Phoenix has a large list of self-certified registrants, and Surprise decided to take the reciprocity approach and say that anybody who's registered to do this in Phoenix can do this in our jurisdiction. It's a good way of moving forward. New construction is okay in Surprise, but no high rises, no hillside development, no large assemblies, meaning no churches, no builds that are designed for large groups, and no projects that are affected by FEMA or floodplain issues. So they made their exceptions very clear. They didn't want to be dealing with self-certification in these types of projects because they take more eyes, they take more involvement. They also do not allow life safety reviews and the life safety aspects of projects to be self-certified. So fire protection plans and fire protection permits are not run through this program. That would get a little interesting, I think, with our body of work, because in most of our builds, we have a significant fire protection or life safety component. And I'm not really clear how you would separate that out and make that have to be a separate permit. It sounded kind of clunky to me. At any rate, they do exclude that. Also, the program may not be used for previously unpermitted work. So they're not using this as a means of amnesty. When you discover that a project has been unpermitted, usually it results in an uncomfortable conversation, a stop work order at times, and we have to get folks, in to apply for a permit. And oftentimes it takes a number of conversations. So we wouldn't want to use that either as a means of the self-certification program. Chris shared that in 2020, the jurisdiction has only done 6 self-certified permits year to date. So while he doesn't think that the program is that popular, he actually had more praise for it, and you'll see that later in the presentation. Next slide. We talked with John Sheffer, the chief building official at City of Mesa. Again, this was kind of blowing through the valley in the early 2010s. So 2013, they launched as well. They do the same thing that Surprise does in terms of accepting any self-certified registrant that does business in the city of Phoenix. They do allow it for new construction. They allow it for residential accessory structures, commercial tenant improvements, and specific types of projects like storage facilities and industrial occupancies. So they've strategized that certain types of projects like industrial projects, it's a different type of build. It may be that contractors that work in those genres of building actually may use a more consistent plan set type over time. So I can see why they tapped that as one of their opportunities. They do allow it for small projects on a case-by-case basis, but the CBO reviews every request. And anybody who self-certifies with them has to have completed the City of Phoenix's self-certification training. Next slide, please. So we've talked about the benefits, but these, there is an opportunity. They can submit code compliant plans, receive permits at the time of submittal, and with confidence on their plan set, they can get through the inspection process and get their vertical build delivered without the plan review timeframe that is normally associated with a project. A segment of our business could really gain measurable shortened timeframes for permit issuance through this type of program. I see it as the greatest opportunity probably for commercial TIs, change of use, as I talked about before. The small renovation permits and residential new builds are an option. We would have to look at that in terms of our topographical challenges and some of the things that are more unique to building in Prescott. But I do think that there is an opportunity here to look at certain permit types and see how this might fit. Next slide. So I asked some folks what they say about this. And this is actually a quote that I located in some of the press releases that I read when these programs were launched. Mesa Mayor and home builder Scott Smith, former Mesa Mayor and home builder Scott Smith stated, "The reality is that some engineers and some architects do not stay completely up to date with building and fire codes." So again, we do know that this is true. We've had some of our registrants say this. We like the fact that you plan review our work. Together, we deliver a better project. I bring my knowledge to the plan set. You bring your code book knowledge and your checks to the plan set. We get a project that is built to a common standard, and we move forward with confidence. There are others that would probably say, I don't need a plan review. It's not necessary to plan review my work because I'm confident that I'm code compliant. Next slide. Community Development Director Chris Boyd actually said when the program started, he was very skeptical, but he says that now if he could get everybody to do it, he would. So I thought that was an interesting take. Even though they've only had 6 permits year to date through the self-certification program and Surprise, he is fully sold on the idea and wishes more people would participate. So you have that issue too. You can't make people do it. Potential drawbacks. As I mentioned, inspections may reveal code deficiencies, and it also calls for a more plan review type eye in the field. So I think our inspection team, we may need to modify certifications or add the plan review certification if we decided to proceed with something like this. It just places the onus on the inspection team, and that's something to consider. I did mention about builds possibly being interrupted while code deficiencies in the field are resolved. Not ideal. Those delays would come at a very, very critical time in the project, and those conversations would be no more pleasant to have than where's my permit? Why is my plan review taking so long? So we need to acknowledge that as well. And then auditing the program will require department resources. And we have to assign somebody to actually do the auditing. And that is going to result in plan review hours. So we need to look at that realistically and understand that plan review hours that are being removed from the queue of our in-house plan reviewers, they're going to need to spend some time auditing the program, and that would result in some diminishment of those benefits. Next slide. So we already have a number of customized programs that we offer and that we've launched over the past couple of years. So it really is telling that we continue to struggle with volume when we have created these special programs that are designed to assist and compress timeframes for a certain segment of our book of business. Permit by inspection is a 5-day turnaround on qualifying commercial tenant improvements. So this really kind of aligns with the idea of self-certification. We basically know that on a commercial project, there is going to be an architect or a civil engineer. A registrant is going to be involved. It's required by commercial code. And we've afforded the commercial contracting community the opportunity to use permit by inspection. This would come in handy if they're building a similar scenario each time, like the guy with the dental offices. There's just, it has to fit the criteria, but when it does, it works seamlessly, and that's a great program. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we also have the Model Home Express permits, which is a 5-day turnaround on site-specific single-family residence permits where a master model home plan has already been approved. We do virtual inspections, which are created for same-day jobs, and get rid of that. For same-day jobs, such as water heaters, roofing projects, anything, HVAC installation. We don't want the contractors to have to come back the next day, because the typical scenario is the work gets done one day, you know that you're ready for an inspection, you call it in, the inspection happens the next day. This was really interrupting contractors who do these smaller types of jobs, water heater replacement, roofing, HVAC installs. All can benefit from virtual inspection because it happens the same day the job does, and there's no reason to come back to the site. Fences and sheds, smaller site-only reviews that are usually exclusively performed by planning staff. They lighten the building staff load. So we have ferreted off a number of smaller projects that are not subject to building code that can be handled by internal planning staff to move them out faster. And they used to be assigned building reviews. So we've really gained some ground with those as well. So we do have several programs that are currently working and accomplish a lot of the same things that self-certification might. So the other option that is sort of hanging out there is quite simple: to increase the number of plan review staff. Plan review staff has been static since after the economic downturn. And we even modified an operational model within community development and removed a half of a plan review position to allocate some supervisory time with one of our team members over the permitting staff. It was necessary at the time, and we've limped along with plan review since then. That person still participates in half-time plan review load, if not more. And also the CBO has been carrying not a half-time plan review load, but a significant plan review load that would not normally be a part of a CBO's day-to-day duties. He's jumped in because his background is plan review. He did that with Prescott Valley and with Yavapai County. And where we've been just overflowing with work, it's been necessary. So an additional plan reviewer would work to accommodate the current volumes. The idea that I have about a new position would create a plan review position that would operate as sort of a plan review tech, a counter tech, in essence, to absorb the smaller, simpler permit types, the ones that we used to be able to offer over the counter until our code changes forced us to take in things like window replacements as a full review. Some of those shorter, simpler permit types could really be pushed out on a same-day basis or a 24-hour basis if we had one position that we could dedicate to those types of permits. The larger commercial and complex residential on the custom builds really do take a more experienced, a higher technologically adept plan reviewer. And this is where I really feel my shortage is in terms of having to ask somebody to stop everything and please get this small permit out so that we can move more permits this week. It just creates a difficulty with workflow. And as I mentioned, it would free up our veteran plan reviewers, those with our higher technical abilities, for the increasing numbers of complex commercial projects and the custom residential builds that we know are always going to be there with our local builders. Position data, just for council's consideration. This is a general fund department, so it's a general fund position. Entry level plan review salary is between $45,000 and $50,000. with fringe benefits. In other words, all of the benefits that come with a position calculated at Mark Woodfill's 35% of salary. So for about $66,000 a year in total, we could address compressing more work volume to shorter plan review timeframes. And it would be, I think, it would just make sense to, with current volumes, to attempt to restore plan review staffing to pre-economic downturn levels. And that would also be accomplished through adding a position. Acknowledging that that's not been a conversation that council's been having, especially out of the budget cycle. I just want to express my appreciation to Michael for giving me the opener to review this data and these opportunities and options with council, and for the support in the frank conversation that we've had about how much work we are capable of getting out in a week. And as an example of that, I think it would be helpful for council to know that about 6 weeks ago, Laurel Collins, who I deem my senior plan reviewer, she has the highest level of technical expertise on the team. She quantified all of the plan reviews that she had due in 1 week, in a 40-hour week. And it was 158 hours of plan review time. That was across all permit types and everything that was in her queue for that week. So that's obviously unworkable. A person working a 40-hour position with occasional overtime due to volume could accomplish a fourth of that. So we really need to look at logistically and realistically what's possible for each of the people working in this part of our department and get some help on the way. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that council might have. Thank you so much for listening.
Well, thank you, Brenda. It's a great presentation. Learned a lot, like the self-certification information was very helpful for me. So let's go around the horn here with the council. We'll start with Councilwoman Scholl.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, Bryn and Chelsea, for that great presentation. Definitely a lot to consider. I think one thing that I find very encouraging is a lot of options have already been explored and implemented to avoid trying to bring more people on board. And you know, as a governing body, we just have to realize that we might be at a point where we can't make anything more efficient to avoid bringing more staff on board. So definitely something to seriously consider, adding this position to your department in order to make your workload more feasible and to also just expedite and streamline things for our construction community.
All right, thank you. Councilwoman Orr.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Well, I will tell you, I have a lot of friends at Prescott Lakes. They go, "Why did you take Bryn and Chelsea away from us?" And because they have just done such a great job for the city of Prescott. But you know, I'm just so thrilled that we've not lost revenue through all of the COVID. We've lost, you know, some of our areas, but the one area that has kept us afloat is construction. And I mean, it is the largest increase that we've seen. I know a lot of people don't like the growth. They don't like the idea that we're building homes, but this is a segment of our economy that has really held the city up. And it's amazing what our community development's been able to do with the staff that they have, considering the increase. So I'm all for whatever we can do to help them, because they are right now the lifeblood for this economy.
All right, thank you. Let's go to Councilmember Roosing.
Thank you. I'd like to go back to the self-certification program. I did get feedback from an architect who's local here, and he was not supportive of it because he just felt that another set of eyes would be helpful. And so my question is, can this program be made optional to give people, so it's not mandatory, they can join it if they want, if they're comfortable? And also, does the self-certification program apply only to architects, or does it apply to draftsmen too? Because a lot of plans are drawn up by people who aren't certified architects?
Thank you for those questions, Councilmember Rusing. This would be entirely optional. And again, that is one of the reasons that we find it very important to survey not only the registrant community, but our general contractors, because not all of them use technical registrants to create their plan sets. Those who do commercial work typically do utilize technical registrants because it's a code requirement, but many of our custom builders use private designers who are also extremely capable. This program would not be an accommodation for those scenarios because as non-registrants, they would not be able to certify with their seal on a set of plans that they have designed to code. Now, we do expect designers, private designers, to design to code, and many of them are very versed in it and very good at it. And a lot of our local contractors have private designers that they are happy to work with and don't require an architect or a civil engineer. There are there's a segment of the builder community that does use registrants, and this would be an option for those residents, not a requirement.
Okay, thank you very much. Very helpful.
You're welcome.
All right, Councilman Good. Councilman Good, do you have any questions or comments?
There we go. Well, clearly we're dealing with a pretty significant spike in permitting and plan review, and combining that with the fact that our counters are open and closed and reopened, and we're trying to get some of our historicals, maybe small contractors, up to speed off their flip phones and onto their smartphones, and being able to get comfortable with the permitting, et cetera. So it's really hard to anticipate and project how much continued demand would be in the future when we're still trying to get through all these unpredictable conditions. So as we move forward and some of these restrictions start to be reduced, I think we'll have a better picture when we take a look at our budgeting for next fiscal year. So thank you for all your efforts. I know it's a challenge to try to get some of these computer systems enacted and adopted, while at the same time you still have people that want to do paperwork and want to do paper permitting. So it's a difficult challenge, and I applaud all your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councilman Blair.
You can tell I'm enjoying your office. I just have to say thank you, Bran. You know, I, unlike Councilman Good, have been here for a while and have seen the ups and downs in the construction world. We saw it in 2007, 2008. I believe you were with the county. We're in a real different time now where all the residential construction that's out at the Dells and Walden Farms and Westridge and what I would consider to call North Prescott, we are not going to slow down. If you're out and about and you see every single one of those lots that have a for sale sign on them, they are not anticipated just to be a spec house. They are somebody's home that's bailing out of somewhere to come to a better place for quality of life. We owe it not only to our staff to be highly qualified, but to have plenty of people so we don't have a stress level on the staff side and or on the contractor side. So in my opinion, and I hope Mr. Lamar is listening, I would advocate for cross-training without a doubt of plans examiners as well as inspectors. And I would advocate for one of each in the next budget go around. I've always been of the attitude, even though we are a government last in, first fired, that slows down, we have to take the perspective that we're here for our community and we have to do the right thing based upon the environment we're in today, or not the environment that we think we might be in tomorrow. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Hey, Councilman, and then Councilman Fish.
You know, Mayor, one of the nice things about being last is that everybody's already said all the good stuff, so I have no more comment.
Sarah?
That's a beautiful
Sarah,
picture.
can you hear me?
Yes, now I can. Sorry, you cut out for a moment there. Michael, go ahead.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can I speak for just a second, if that's okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just, two things that I'd like to add to Bren and Chelsea's presentations. The additional plans examiner position has been not just something that internally is supported. This is industry supported and industry requested as well. I think it's important to note that as we try to be customer service oriented, that this additional plans examination position is something that the industry is highly supportive of. And just one more comment to kind of bring it all together. I hope you realize that none of these individual elements, whether it's self-certification or express permitting or any of the other measures we've taken, like going online, or a magic bullet or a panacea to all of the issues we have to address. It's all of those things together that makes the whole product better. And I think at this point, we've done enough with existing resources to justify that we've become as efficient as we can with the human resources we've been allocated. And really, we just need to seriously consider adding this additional body. And that's all I have to say to that subject.
Yep, very good. Thank you, Michael. Well, I would just say I support this new position. I agree with Councilman Blair and I think others that, you know, we're somewhat insulated here in Prescott. We see those folks coming from out of state, particularly California or up from Phoenix, and I just think it's going to continue. And so I applaud Bren and the others there in community development for your great work. And I think this is a much needed addition. So thank you. Sarah, do you have public comment on this?
I do not, Mayor.
Okay, no public comment. We've gone around through the council. Is there anyone else that I've missed here before we adjourn?
Mayor, just one more thing I'd like to add is, as all of you know, with permit volumes being high, there is going to be some offset to the general fund paid for by the customer. And there's other things we can do in terms of the private contractor that if we feel like the plans examination is now being handled even more internally, you could conceivably see less private contractor money spent for plans examinations. So I want that to be presented too. And I see Bren nodding that there may be some offsets that don't make this fall completely on the burden of the general fund without some permit fees to help. So.
Yep. No, it makes sense. Good point. Thank you, Michael. All right. If there's nothing else, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. It's a little after 3 o'clock, so let's take a little break here and try to reconvene in 5 minutes. Is that okay, Sarah?
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back for the voting session. Thank you.
Thank you all.